I wanted to talk to you about another issue that, as you know, I put in videos about Coleman Watts. May she rest in peace, and her beautiful children. May they rest in peace. Blessed memory, I should say too. Why are we so interested in the Christopher Watts case? And we think if you think it's unique, you should realize that in 2011, I believe, there was a case of a man who murdered two beautiful boys. I think they're like very small, primary school age. I don't want to say the ages, maybe I'm wrong. And his wife, I don't remember which state that was, but he did work for a preacher. He was a son of a preacher, and he worked for a preacher called Joyce Meyer. And now he was her security man. And interesting enough, she claims she didn't know anything. He was flying his mistress all over the US as she was preaching. He had a job being the security man of this Joyce Meyer. Now this Joyce Meyer, this preacher, this evangelist or whatever preacher, she's against people having affairs in a marriage. While I think most of us can agree that that's a very good topic, still how you handle having affairs is another matter. She said that if she had found out he had affairs, there would have been grounds for his dismissal. They're against divorce. So of course this guy, instead of seeking divorce, instead of having affairs openly, hid those affairs. And I think any spiritual path that ignores the fact that people will have affairs, people will seek other relationships, and the question is, how do you deal with it? Are you going to kill your entire family to hide it? To hide the fact that you're having affairs, because otherwise you would lose a very lucrative job. I mean, this is something that Joyce Myers never took responsibility for as a preacher. And when these people preach for this purity of family, they should also be aware that people will sin, people will, whatever sin means, people will have affairs. The question is, how do you deal with that? And the question is, what about the children? Now, this man had affairs with a woman's best friend from high school, and he flew her all over the state. He had an extensive relationship online that's well documented. And then at the same time, he started a campaign where he supposedly got threatened for working with Joyce Myers. Now, she said she knew of those threats. Now, how difficult is it to discover the fact that those threats were phony? If indeed there were threats against him and his family for working for Joyce Myers, why wasn't Joyce Myers involved in it? Why didn't she investigate it? Why didn't the police investigate it in a deeper way? I mean, it was very easy after those poor children and wife were murdered to discover that all those threats were false. And he left horrible helter-skelter sort of sayings, writing on the wall that were traced to his handwriting. There was his handwriting. He bought the spray can, and yet his family, his preacher father and mother, claimed, no, it's not possible he killed the children. Now, what's worse about it is that there were cameras, there were security cameras placed by the police investigator who was living in this neighborhood. And this man, also called Christopher, by the way, who is right now in prison, serving sentence for that. The police investigator put security cameras on this house, just like what happened with the Watts, and there was nobody going in that house. It was clearly an inside job. And the man faked, you know, he was like crying, oh my God, what happened to my wife and children? And a day before, the security camera sees him playing with his boys on the lawn. At the same time, he has this very passionate relationship with this woman, and he spends hours on the internet posting all sorts of lewd videos as if he was a teenager. So this is very typical of Christopher Watts' case. This man, it's not only a psychopath, not only narcissist, but they have a developmental problem when they don't realize they're, first of all, fathers. And the pathetic part is that he's a son of a preacher who never actually admitted his son did it. He denies his son murdered the grandchildren. They didn't even give them a funeral where they spoke about the children and the wife. He claims the wife was ill and unable to perform her duties, and he had to have a mistress. Good for you. Then why do you have to murder your children and wife? That's because Joyce Meyer preaches for the very extreme evangelist sort of way of life where there's no tolerance for any sort of affairs. And this is part of it, is he was worried about losing his job. But then again, even if he wasn't working for this preacher, the man clearly had his priorities: money, 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 and his mistress, mistress, mistress. And then he forgot all about the children, all about the wife. And since they no longer served the purpose of a cover-up for him, or he was bored, he just decided to murder them. His name was also Christopher. The sad part is that now the woman, his wife, was found beaten, and yet his preacher father backs him up. Joyce Meyer didn't know, she didn't know. Wow, you didn't know your security officer is forging threats against you? Like, if there were threats against you, you didn't investigate it? You didn't get to the bottom of who is doing that when it's so easy to trace it to his computer? So when we're angry about the Christopher Watts case, let's not forget this is not the first time this happens. And a lot of times, pregnant women that are murdered, it's their boyfriend, it's their husband. Why? Because all of a sudden he realizes that he's going to be financially tied to a child he doesn't want, in a relationship he doesn't want. So what does a mature person do? Divorce, leave, separate. What is a person who's very calculating and thinking about money, 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 mistress, 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 or affair, 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 whether it's a man or woman? He eliminates the children as if they were objects to be eliminated. So Christopher Watts is just one type of case. Let's pray to God, or wherever you pray to, the force of the universe, that this would be the last case. But in order for it to be the last case, we have to remember two things. All those people making videos claiming, oh, this is how you recognize a psychopath. I want to confirm, psychopaths are not easy to identify. You cannot identify a psychopath. They are wearing masks of absolute perfect family men, and we should, yes, there are also women, by the way, there are psychopaths, but mostly men. And it has to do with the connection to children, probably. Although men can have a deeper connection even than some women. I'm not saying they can't, but it's something to do with social culture roles. I don't know. So psychopaths are not easy to spot. But if you suspect your husband, partner is having an affair, one reason why you shouldn't tolerate it is that he could turn against the children and you. He could turn violent. Because once the children are not in a top priority, men, unfortunately, due to testosterone, tend to be violent when they cannot get the ideal situation they seek, the ideal situation. They don't want to pay alimony. They don't want to pay for the kids anymore. They found a new woman. They have a new reality. A lot of times it's men in their, it's sort of like a turning point where they're questioning their masculinities, questioning who they are. And so please be safe. And there's guidelines you should follow. You should go to domestic violence centers and ask how you can leave a man who might be very dangerous to your children and you. Peace, light, and love.